Welcome, everybody. I'm Aimee Cartier. I am the founder of a couple of courses, one called Claim Your Empathic Superpower and another called Own Your Intuition. And I do these classes once a year, each of them. And I thought it might be nice to hear from some of the people who've done the class to see what was their experience. What thoughts did they have prior to doing it? How did it work out after? All of the stuff. So it is my great pleasure to have my friend and student, Renée Baribault, today to answer some questions and talk about the programs. I'm glad you're here.
Thanks. I'm glad I'm here too.
So tell us a little bit about yourself for whatever you want to tell us. And then, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I live in the Northwest also, out on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. And I have 2 teen kids. I have a house full right now. Actually, I have 2 teenagers, 2 dogs, and a cat. Yeah, it is a house full. It feels like a house full right now. And I've been a massage therapist for the last 10 years, retired from that in 2020, and started working for a small company doing administration. So it's like totally different, just something completely different. And I'm really having a great time with it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm married. I love open water swimming, being outside in the woods.
I love it.
Yeah,
good.
That's me.
So we do this practice in our house where we do it like sometimes over the dinner table, sometimes when we're riding in the car, sometimes when reparations are needed. I have 2 small children. So the practice that we do is we say one thing that we love about ourselves and then one thing that we love about every other person there. So I feel like this interview is kind of like the things that we're talking about my work. So I wanted to start by asking you, I want to say something I love about you. And I want to also ask you, what is one thing that you love about yourself or that you're really good at?
I mean, I think the thing that I love the most is my curiosity, because it just feels like such an innate thing that really is a driving force in my life. And it keeps me like asking questions and turning over rocks and, looking into the dark places and the light places and just following the fun. So I think that it's kind of both things. It's like something I love about myself and what I'm good at. I think what I've gotten good at is following my curiosity, being like courageous enough to do that. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's lovely. One thing I love about you is you have this amazing ability to like download and integrate information at lightning speed. And as a teacher, it is so fun to watch, but you're like, oh, what was that? What? Oh, okay. That feels right. Okay. And then you're like almost within the same step out, starting to integrate it into your life, to move that way, to feel that way, to integrate it. And it's something really special and unique about you. And it's, as a teacher, it's super fun to watch. Like, okay, well, she's nailed that now because we were talking about it for 5 minutes. And now let's continue forward. What else are we doing? So it probably goes hand in hand with your curiosity. The 2 seem very aligned in when you say that, when I hear you say that. So I love that.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
So my questions are over here, so I'm going to glance at them. So one of my questions that I start with asking people is, how did you find me or discover me? This is, Renee and I have been friends for quite a long time, way before she took my classes. So, but what do you want to say about that? I'm still going to ask the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about that because I've done a lot of programs, or, I've done a lot of, my curiosity has led me to a lot of like learning. And I think the place that it feels interesting to me is that because we were friends, I felt a level of trust in you that sort of made the decision to do the class easier. But it also, there's always a risk when you're friends with someone and then you do their work. Like I've been a massage therapist, so, you know, working on my friends, like, well, are they going to like what I do? So I think my respect and my trust in you only grew as we, you know, went through the program. And I just was like, oh my God, like how did I wait so long to do this work with you? Why did I wait so long?
So good. So good.
Yeah.
Some stories about you are coming to my mind, but they're kind of like not really related to what we're talking about. So I think I'm just gonna put a hold on that. But I'm so glad you did. It's always, for me, it's such a delight to have my friends and people in my classes, and that happens. And anyway, yay. I'm glad you did it. Done. Now you've got it dialed, as we all know, because I just told you. Renee's already got it dialed now. Okay, so what challenges, if you can remember, actually a little bit of context, Renee has done both my Claim Your Empathic Superpower class and also my Own Your Intuition course. So, and I don't really remember which you did first, do you?
Well, they were the names, I think, of the classes have changed slightly.
Empath.
So yeah,
Yep.
so it was the tools first, the base, like the basic
Intuition.
tools 101, and then there was like a 202 was the second.
Oh, okay. So you did empath first. And
Empath.
then,
Yeah.
okay. And then what I used to have is an empath 202, but now it's called Own Your Intuition, and it's open to anybody, whether they're empathic or not. Okay. So you did your empath one first. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you remember where you were started? Where, like, what were you feeling when you first began? How did that?
Yeah. For a long time, I felt a lot of overwhelm. And to me, it was a sensation of turning, like there was this inside out sensation, like in my solar plexus. It just felt like I almost like dissolve outward. And so I think I spent a lot of time trying to kind of like figure out where I was. and it led to this feeling of overwhelm, like often. Overwhelm also that like I didn't have the like look within techniques, or maybe even just because there was so much feeling of like going outward, that's where I looked. You know, I was like, myself was just like spilling out. So there was a lot of giving, a lot of nurturing. I had, you know, 2 kids. So there was a lot of like, being where they were in their struggles rather than being able to sort of hold my parent role. I'd get sort of overwhelmed into their stuff too. I saw it show up in that way a lot, especially as they kind of got into the middle school years and things were so tumultuous, as they are for anyone going through that time. Yeah, but also this like looking outward, like I need to find the thing that's going to help me not feel this way, without really being like, oh, the thing is like in here. So that was like, you know, really where I came into your programs.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, and you already told me how it was impacting your life. And did you have any fears about the class? I mean, we touched on one of them because we're friends. There's that, like, crap. What if I don't like what she does? Or what if makes it weird? But any other fears? Like, what thoughts did you have as a person that was about to enter, but hadn't really experienced it yet?
I think, I don't know that happens as much for me.
Okay.
Because of that curiosity piece. Like I tend to kind of dive into things and then figure it out when I get in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. You're like, all right, let's see what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm like, can this help? Let's try.
I love it. Okay, good. Okay, so what are the format? What was the format? What was it like being in class? So let me give a little context here for anyone who doesn't know. I teach my classes on the phone. I have since 2015, very purposely, not on Zoom. We do 2 hours of class time every other week, and then there's homework, and we're also connected via WhatsApp as we go along, so that we're in contact whenever, like daily. I send out things, and people chime in or not on the WhatsApp thing, but that's sort of the overall picture. So 2 hours of phone classroom every other week. And so what was the experience for you of that?
I think the phone, the way of the format of doing it on the phone is brilliant, because I think being in a room full of, or even a Zoom room full of other empaths, is very distracting, especially at the beginning when people are learning the tools. And I'm a super visual person, so seeing everyone, and I'm kind of like pieces, my attention is like divided.
Yeah.
So it felt like I could be in my space visually in my room, wherever I was, and kind of have that almost like the blinder, to be able to just sort of like shut off one of those senses and really just be able to be with myself more in the process. It was really helpful to me. And I
Excellent.
still felt like there was a good container.
Mm.
Like, I feel like you set a good container, and hold the space. Like, I felt your presence, even though I didn't see you. So it really worked for me.
Excellent. Good. You just touched on all the reasons why I do it this way purposely. Sometimes people still ask me, why don't you do things on Zoom? I mean, I know now in 2022, everybody's totally zoomed out, but I've been doing this for years and people have been asking me for a long time. And that's literally precisely why, because I want you to be in your own space, being able to integrate the information and not be worried about what you look like, what other people look, what's in her background, what's going on over there. And
Yeah.
you can draw or whatever. You can be in the bathtub if you want. We will not know or care. Whatever works for you in order to integrate the tools. So that's cool. But sometimes people have concerns about, like, are they really will they be seen, heard, understood? Will they feel connected to their other peers in terms of understanding them? So that's why I asked that.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because the other thing that I think matters, and I think you set the tone for this, is that people are really present. Like, that's something that you ask at the beginning of class. And so it's not like people are like on their earbuds, like cleaning their house or doing other things. Like, people are really like in the class, it's not just something they're doing while they're doing other things. So I think that that's partially just the intention that you said, and people's commitment to the class. So that matters,
Yeah, totally. It's not a side hustle. It's not like a side thing you're doing. You're like there,
Yeah.
and we're all there, and we share too. So something that people, if you haven't been in the class, you wouldn't know, but at the onset of the class, we talk about, hey, what was your experience? What happened when you used this tool? What did any questions come up? But more, I'm always really wanting to draw out of each of you of, what did you notice? What is the difference when you do that? And then when you haven't done it, like, what can you know now about how this tool affects you and works for you? So
Yeah.
we talk. And sometimes that's another thing that people come up with out there. Like, I've had students ask me, I'm uncomfortable sharing like that. Do I have to do that? And I always say, yes, you have to. I'm sorry. That's just a part of the program. And part of it is because we're using ethereal tools, and these are so easy to happen and then forget about. Nobody else is going to notice the stuff you're doing. It's very internal. I mean, I guess that's not totally accurate, but in terms of the processes, the tools you're using, it's not like you're doing something and somebody sees you do something,
Right.
because it's all really ethereal. It's likely it can go unnoticed, and especially by you, of like, what happened and what were you doing, and wow, how did this feel? So articulating it, as I say thousands of times, I feel, to all of my students, is a super important part of it. It helps lock the information in for you, and it helps you understand what you're capable of, because you're telling everyone else oh, I did this. And then you're recognizing it. So
Right.
sometimes people feel uncomfortable about the sharing. And just, I wanted to check in with you of like, what I always say is, I understand if you have those concerns, but it truly is a safe place. People are really real, but it feels like a sacred and safe container. So was that your experience in terms of chatting with your fellow classmates and what you were talking about yourself?
Yeah, totally. I do feel like it was a mutually respectful and safe container. And the sharing, it really does make a difference. It like solidifies the learning in a way. And I think also it's just like having that accountability each
Yeah.
time. I'd find myself like paying attention in the time between to what was happening so that I could mark it. And that was a huge learning for me because I wouldn't always, like, even if I've done other programs, like I'm not so great at pausing and marking the change.
Hmm.
And I think, probably partially because I integrate things so quickly too.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, the next thing, the next thing. But having that time to reflect and mark the change was really helpful to me, because then I could see how this was working and see the changes, and also like where it was impacting my life and where I might be able to take that and move and apply it somewhere else also. Um,
Nice. That's so
yeah.
great. That's so great. I don't often think about the accountability piece, or I don't often think about it in terms of that, but it's totally true. It does require you to pay attention more because I'm going to ask you, hey, so what happened? And you're gonna
Yeah.
describe it to your fellow classmates. Totally.
Yeah.
The other thing that I love so much about the way that I structure these is the how people learn from each other. I mean, the discussion is so rich every time. And I have a private program and if it's a fit, sometimes it really is, that's the thing that the person needs. But if before we get to that point, I'm like, well, how about you come over here? Because there's going to be people there and they're going to say things that maybe didn't happen to you this in the last 2 weeks, but that are really
Right.
impactful for you. So I love, yeah, it's the thing that sets this particular format apart from doing like a video online course or something, which absolutely can be useful. I understand myself even how they can be useful, but it is different. And it does require you to show up and talk to us about what happened. And it's
Mhm.
not as scary as people sometimes think it is, it turns out. It's probably most often the case, but in life anyway. Okay, so we talked about the phone and learning in a group. So I'm interested, any other thoughts you have about why this program was so impactful to you, or what, or maybe because we haven't quite gotten to that yet in terms of what was the impact on you, but actually let's just go there. What was the impact on you? What do you notice that is different now that you've taken these classes, that you learned, that
Mhm.
what's different about your life now?
Like everything. um I think, if I go back to that thing that I said about that feeling of kind of turning inside out,
Hmm.
I think the main thing that's different is I learned to sort of tuck it all back in into some kind of container. And really the practices are what keeps that happening. And I use them always, every single day. And I think, there's a couple things. One of the things that I think is amazing is that um, I can keep going back. It's like the simple tools that work right away, but also that can continue to be used and built on and built on and built on. It's like something that really grows, grows with you. It grew with me. Um, so even just kind of going back through things, prepping for the interview, I was like, oh yeah, I have to use that. Okay, this is the next thing that I can like look at and focus on, a piece that I haven't really integrated fully yet. So I feel like it's just like a lifetime of learning. I can keep going back to these simple tools and figuring out how to use them better in my life. So there's that piece. I feel like the simplicity of it makes it so accessible and so useful. Personally, I feel like um because I'm a visual person, I'm going to give you a visual.
Yeah.
So I was feeling like I was turning inside out. And now I feel like I've created myself, like I'm this hub. It's like I'm the center of something. And then everything that I touch is like a connection that I make, but it's all impacted and by the centerpiece, but the center is always really strong and solid. And that is a huge difference. So instead of being like, oh, I'm over here now, or I'm over here now, or I'm over here now, I'm never over there. I'm always right here, but I can touch into all of these different things. So in that way, I feel like, you know, it's a huge impact on me personally, just in how I exist in my own self, but also it touches everything I touch, because I'm coming at all of these things, like all of my relationships and my work and, you know, people I see in the co-op or whatever. And from this place of like solid grounded centeredness versus like mushy, you know, intertwining, like messy chaos.
I love it. So
Me
good.
too.
Well, one of the things I also know about you is that since you did my program, afterward, you had some health challenges. And I'm interested to know, you can share whatever you want about that, but I'm also interested to know, how did these tools impact you? Like what was the impact with some like real life things that you were going through in terms of that?
Yeah. So in 2020, I could just kind of give everybody a little background, but in 2020, in March of 2020, actually, I found out that I had cancer. And so I started 6 months of chemotherapy in the middle of a pandemic. And like the same week, my kids came home from school and we're now doing homeschool. And so needless to say, it was an incredibly chaotic time. And there were moments where it was not graceful. It was messy and chaotic.
As for everyone live.
Life is still life.
Make that clear.
So, but I think the thing, like navigating all of that stuff would have been so much harder for me if I didn't have the trust in myself that I have, because I know who I am in this way that I didn't, because I didn't have the bound, you know, I didn't have that, like, this is me in this shape, in this energetic container. I trust this person. You know, I have this, I know this, because it's clear what this is and what everything else is. The separation is much clearer.
Yes. Amen.
And so I have something to lean on and rely on and depend on in myself. And I think that allowed me to make the choices that I needed to make, you know, throughout the course of my treatment and with my kids, that made that a lot easier than it could have been. And it was hard. I mean, I think that's something that I've had to learn, is like, there is no easy button. I used to have an easy button, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Those red buttons. And I chased easy for a long time. And easy just, I think it doesn't really exist in the way that I thought it did. Like, oh, if I just get here, then everything will be easy. But life is just life. And so I think the thing that makes it easier is having my own back and having, you know, the trust in myself and knowing who this person is and being able to lean in when things are not easy, because that happens all the time.
Right.
It's life.
Because life happens, and
Life
we've all
happens.
been through.
Right.
We've all been through it, especially recently. But Yeah, I love what you say. It reminds me of what I say on my empaths of you can separate yourself from everyone. I mean, you need to know the difference between everyone else's stuff and yours, but it doesn't mean that there's never going to be stuff in here, like your own stuff. That's just life. And it happens that we go through these moments from time to time, and nothing will erase that, as you're saying, as you're mentioning, but you have a plan and you know what to do and you know how to get centered here. And I love what you're mentioning about trust in yourself, because it feels like to me, that's the thing of all other things that happen. I mean, I teach all these different tools and all these ways to manage your empathic ability or to be in touch with your intuition and to understand how it's working for you, how to tap it, how to access it. But ultimately, the thing that I feel personally most proud of with all of the work that I do is that my students, it almost makes me cry. My students leave. It's going to make me cry. Knowing that they can trust themselves. And to me, that makes such a difference, because that is true for everyone. Once you just, like you're describing, lock into, hey, what's here? What's going on here? You have so many insights to whoever you are. That is true. And it's the recognizing it and then having all the experience that you have while we're together for these 7 months that shows you, oh yeah, like that is true. I did that. And I had this insight and followed it, and this amazing thing happened, and
Yes.
all these things where I personally just feel so proud that that is where my students end up, whether they take my empath program or whether they take my intuition program. The end result is an understanding that you have it inside. That's what you need. And it's not hard to access it. Life is going to come at you in different things, and different things are going to happen. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to have emotions that are like, what the God, I wish this wasn't happening. But you are going to know that you have an ally, and it's internal, and it doesn't ever leave you.
So good.
So good.
So good.
Okay. Let me just glance at my question. So I'm also interested in knowing, do the results last? I'm going to look at the time for a second. Do the results last? Because how long ago was it that you took my program?
2017 and 18. So the end of 2017 and early 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Yeah.
So tell us, do the results last?
Yeah, I would say not only do the results last, but if you keep like integrating the tools, which I think just happens over the course of practicing,
totally.
like you said, like each week you get to practice and you're doing these different things. I think it's built into the program that you kind of come out with the practice kind of habituated to a certain extent.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that like I said earlier, like it just keeps growing. Like, so it's not just that it keeps working, but it actually like it gets stronger and more integrated, and the trust grows, because really it is, the trust grows, right? I mean, that's kind of the thing. It's like so many of us have learned not to trust that inner voice. I think especially women, I think personally, I as a woman experienced that. And so it's like this relearning and reopening of that channel that's always kind of been there speaking, but the voice, the counter voice has been so quick to be like, yeah, but no, not that. So it's kind of reestablishing that pathway. Like the more you use it, the more it gets established. And so I think it's something that just keeps growing as you use it, like over time.
So true. I love that. For me, it just makes me think of, I mean, there's the obvious thing of one, that's why I do long programs. I mean, I can teach the essential tools for an empath in an evening, but then you're like, for a hot second, you've got it. You're like 2 weeks, you're like, oh my God, this is so great. I'm totally, and then like you forget and it falls apart and you can't even remember that you took this class with me and that you had these tools and blah, blah, blah. And that's not what happens when we're together for all these months and we're you're dialing the things and you have this experience. But the other thing it makes me think of, which is also something that I say in my classes, but I teach the tools that work for me. I teach the ones that I created so that I could flourish in the world, for example, as an empath, or so that I could have access to my intuition whenever I needed it, because I understood at a certain point in my life, in my late 20s, that this was the thing that was guiding me toward all the great things. And if I followed it, then all kinds of things would open up for me in ways that I could never have anticipated or expected. So, but the thing that I always feel is important and that I say to my students is, I'm going to teach you the framework. I'm going to teach you the tool that works for me, and you're going to use it. And if it morphs into something else for you, or it looks slightly different, or you'd come at it from a different angle or whatever, then that is what you should be doing, because it's, I teach the basics. I teach what I know works for me. And one of my favorite things is how I watched my students over the months of our time together, where they're like, okay, so I'm doing this, and now this is what happened, and it looks like this. And I wish I could. Oh, I remember one of my favorites recently was one of my students was like, my highest self is now like, talks to me like a drag queen because she loves drag queens. And she's like, yeah, mama, what? Anyway, we were laughing so hard about what is essentially the tool is a deep connection to your own highest knowing that doesn't ever leave you. And the current manifestation of one of my students was, it had she had this voice, and it was so meaningful and impactful for her, and just like satisfying in this deep way. And so I love what you're saying about how it integrates and it gets stronger, because you make the tools your own. Then you know, again, it's you using what's in here, giving a framework.
And it's just such a brilliant way to teach, because what you're going for is that trust in self, not in the ability to follow the directions, right?
Totally. Absolutely.
So it totally makes sense that you would be teaching to make it your own. I just think it's such an integral part of the way that you teach that I think it's worth mentioning.
Well, it's important because we're each, your intuition, your skills work for you. And one of the most amazing and fun and shocking and also sometimes hard for people things about their intuition is that it's going to guide you sometimes in ways that nobody wrote on a paper. And if you were trying to gather advice, people would be like, not totally sure that's a good idea, but it is a good idea. And when you follow it, it's perfect. So it really, for me, is so much about integrating them to listen to what your voice says. How does this work for you, and what's going on? And that is the magic for you. We all have our own magic. And so
okay, that brings me to something that I feel like is really important. Can I share
please,
it?
go ahead.
So the piece that I learned, I mean, there's so many pieces, literally like all the pieces have been useful. I can't think of one aspect that hasn't been. And I'm not just saying that to toot your horn. I really truly believe it. But a couple of pieces. One, though, is about doing nothing. So and I think that's more of the own your intuition class.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we do talk about it a little bit in the self-care of empaths, but yeah. Go ahead.
But this idea that doing something isn't always the answer. So I think for myself, when I would get to a place of stress and overwhelm and I don't know what to do, I would spend so much energy, like it almost would give me a headache, thinking my way through what's the thing, and really having an issue with like making the right choice, like really, but it's all up here, right? I'm just going through this like perseverating and like I have to find the right choice, and I have to find the right choice. That this opening of maybe the right choice is to do nothing was like mind-blowing to me, because that was never an option. It's like
Right.
this, something's overwhelming. This is stressful. I have to make a decision. Something has to be done. I have to fix this. I have to get out of this discomfort. Like it's all very important. It's an emergency, but nothing is like, do this. There's no clear way forward. And so to have this option of doing nothing, that like maybe that's the choice until the way forward is clear, it was really revolutionary to my life. It really allowed me to begin like letting go of a lot of stuff and just and really building that trust and sitting with like the unknown, which is a super uncomfortable place for me personally.
Many
The
people.
doing of this sort of sitting in the unknown, and this is uncomfortable. There's suffering. I have to do something. Well, there's nothing for you to do right now. It's like, oh, okay.
Okay, take a bath, watch a movie, do something.
Totally.
Stop thinking about this.
Rest. Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so you're right with what I thought you were going a different place, but with this particular thing, this is really own your intuition. That particular tool is more of the idea that as you're saying, I mean, one way I could sum up this conversation is there's usually always, maybe I could say always, but I don't know totally if I can say that, but there's generally always, I want to say it, a third option. If you think there's only two and neither one of them feels right, then I can guarantee there's something else, or the timing isn't right, or, whatever, you need to like take a week off or sit back from it from a week. And then all of a sudden somebody's going to be like, hey, did you, or could you, or this, this is available. Right. And you're like, ding, ding, ding,
Totally.
ding. Okay. Thank you. The right choice arrived.
Yes.
So,
yeah, it's so true.
So good. So good. And it is absolutely a part of trusting yourself, because we always want the answer to be there right away. And we want, this is kind of one of my current students told this great story about working with her guides recently, and how she was trying to make a choice between some ski pants. And she was like, I know this sounds like a meaningless thing, but this is, I've worn the same ski pants for 15 years. So this is kind of like a long-term purchase. And she was like, she had to pick up her kids from school, and there were all these other factors that made it. And she was like, I can't hear. She was trying all of her tools and, wasn't getting one clear answer of the other. It was sort of like no's on both. And so finally she was like, okay, well, I'm just going to like buy one and, put the other one on hold, and I'll go home and try them on, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she does that, leaves the store, and like right next door, there's another shop that she didn't know was there. She walks in and like the perfect pants that she was like, I couldn't even believe they existed. They felt so right and so good. And so is one of those perfect examples where typically we think when we get into that space of, oh my God, we gotta this one or this, or we got to make a decision and blah, blah, blah. And there's no's all around. Mm-hmm. That's because they're no's. Yeah. It's not because we're not getting the information. It's because that is a no. That is don't walk that road. That's not the best road. And anyway.
I think that's actually a perfect example, even though it's silly, because it's an opportunity. It's like an example of like practicing when the stakes are low. Yeah. So that when the stakes are high, those practices are in place.
Yeah, totally.
And it's like practice on the ski pants, practice on, the thing at the co-op that you're choosing between two face creams or something, you know what I mean? Like practice on the low stakes things. And then like when it's a big deal decision, that waiting, that practice is in place. I think that's
totally. Totally. But the other thing that I always feel like it's important to mention, she was like, this is going to sound silly or whatever, but I'm like, this is life, you guys. You're going to have to buy ski pants if you're a skier, or you're going to have to be at the co-op and doing all these things. So in this, I absolutely agree with you about practicing on the low stakes things. But I also feel like low stakes things are basically life. So it's not just that you want your intuition for big things, like what am I going to decide about my children going to school or my health treatments that I need? It's that where you live is in the present where you're like, I need ski pants. Which ones are the best? And
Right.
that's a perfectly good use of your intuition of just living your whole life so that you can make small decisions that are like, who cares if you don't get the right ice cream? Like whatever, there's tomorrow, it's going to be there at the grocery store or next week or whatever. But also that's the brilliance about your own intuition and your abilities is that they will guide you from which ice cream to buy to ski pants investment to
Yeah.
what cancer treatments do I need to do? How
Yeah.
am I going to do this? And it's all in here. So good. Okay. I think you kind of already answered this, but maybe there's something else. I'd just like to give space for, two things actually. I want to know if there's anything that you haven't shared or that I haven't asked you that you wanted to share. And then I also, but maybe let's bookmark that for last. And then I also wanted to know, because you took my empath program, I want to know what rocking thing does being an empath help you do? Like in my classes and even in the things that I put out prior to the program, I focus a lot on the things that are sucko about it, because that's generally where people are at when they start to take my programs. It's overwhelming. It's all of these things. But always, always, always at the end of my programs, my students get to a completely different understanding of what their empathic ability really is and how good it is and useful and so many other ways. So I wanted to ask you, what is your empath, like what is your relationship with that now? But even just like, what do you feel it's good for now?
Yeah. So I think that taking something that felt like it was happening to me and making it a tool and like a superpower. The place that I think that is most impactful is in like all of my relationships. I think that and that may just be me personally, that I'm a relationship person anyway, but I think that what it did for me is
You froze. Wait, you froze a second. You said what it did for me is tell me again.
So having that piece, the center, that like being centered in myself, allows me to use that natural tendency, that empathic tendency, to sort of relate better. Like I can sort of touch into what's going on for other people. If I see, like, with my kids, if they're like reactive, I can kind of get a sense of like what's going on without getting into the reactivity, but like cultivating the sensitivity. So I get to keep the compassionate sensitivity and let it guide me to, being supportive, or, however I can help in my children. In my work, I feel like I can, it's kind of hard to explain, I think, because it feels like it happens so subtly and innately. But I can navigate other people's emotions without getting sucked into them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Like I can do the reading and assessing without being
a vacuum cleaner
in it. Exactly. Or necessarily feeling like I need to help, but it's like taking the temperature. Like I can kind of get the tone of and the temperature of things, which in a work environment, actually, I feel like, with my clients as a massage practitioner, with my family and in my work now, it allows me to, I think, be more effective if I can meet people where they are. I think that's the nugget I was looking for. I think that helps me meet people where they are. And in that way, I can more effectively navigate relating with people.
Totally.
Yeah. And it happens so kind of, subtly. It's a really subtle thing, that part of it for me. But it only works when I'm solid and when I'm using my tools and when I'm like not getting sucked into the
Yeah, totally. Otherwise you are in
yeah.
the whatever it is they're experiencing, and there's
Yeah.
no way of meeting because you're
Right.
sucked in to whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've heard you talk about too is being an amplifier. It's something that I talk about in my courses that is very specific to empaths. And
Yeah.
every time you talk about it, I just feel like, yay, like so happy because well, for several reasons, but as a student of mine, knowing that you're out in the world, understanding that about yourself and doing that wherever you are, it has this, I feel so grateful for that. Is there anything you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, it really is true. People all the time tell me how much of a grounding presence I am.
Mm.
And I think it's that piece. It's like, I am grounded in myself. I have practices. I've prioritized my self-care practices after being in your classes, because it's not negotiable. I realize like it's not helping anyone to not have some self-care practices. Certainly not my family, not myself. It doesn't help anyone, turns out, when I sacrifice myself for them. So I think like keeping those grounding practices, and I think I'm just naturally kind of an earthy person. Like most of my astrological chart is in Taurus. I'm just like super earthy. I love the forest. I love working in the garden. So I think that that's something, and I can turn it on too. Like that's something that I can consciously be like, okay, I'm grounding. And like, that is what, like, I can feel it almost like waves out, I'm like, I am sending grounding energy into this space. I am going to, like, that is what I'm amplifying on purpose. So yeah, I think I do it a lot. It's just become kind of a practice, but it's certainly helpful in times like we're in right now. Like,
Totally.
I actually have, if I can identify with that and take that on as part of me, like I'm grounded, I can ground, I can spread that energy, I can spread that, I can really amplify that. Then it feels a little less like the world is happening to me, but that I
Right.
can actually like influence it back.
Yeah, totally. Which you can.
Which
We
I
all
can.
can.
Yeah.
But I also think empaths have a very specific, just innate amplifying tone. So high five. All right. Anything else you wanted to say?
Let me look at my notes.
Take a look.
Yeah. I think there's so much. I mean, I love these tools so much. But I've done a lot of personal work. Like I spent a good like 5 to 7 years really diving into my own work, and I've learned a ton, and I've experienced a lot of different teachers. And I think something that makes your program unique is, like I said earlier, like the tools are simple and accessible and really useful long term. So I think that I think I can say this with like certainty that your program has probably been the most impactful of all the personal work that I've done, because of the way that it was focused on my relationship with myself and my trust in myself. And um, that it's so basic. It's just like, it's so basic. I don't know how to explain like how it's just a simple process and practice, which makes it incredibly useful. So
good. I'm like tearing up just hearing it.
yeah, it's yeah, I'm a different human, and everyone's happy about that. I don't mean to say that in like a self-deprecating way, but
Yeah,
like
no,
it's
no,
so
but
much better for my family when
it
I'm
ripples
not
out.
like reactive and I'm like having the same crisis as my, like 17-year-old daughter, whatever.
So true.
Yeah.
I love you so much. And I'm
Mhm.
so grateful that you were willing to chat with me so that other people could hear from real live people who have taken my class and to see how it's affected them. So
Yeah. I love you too. Thank you.
big hugs. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.